So we're talking about the book I made with that one photograph of my parents,
Exactly.
which is London,
London,
1939. And I think, of course, in the text there's plenty of information, but I can briefly just mention my mother. I don't know the exact month, but she was still here while Hitler came in, occupied here. But she knew what it meant, so she was ready to leave Austria. And she had a twin sister in London. And through some channels of her sister and her husband, I think she was able to get the visa to be able to leave Austria and connect there. First of all, you know who she connected with was the Quakers. Because the Quakers organized the children transport from Vienna. And so she was working for the Quakers while she still had only a refugee visa. She didn't have a working visa, she had a refugee visa. But the Quakers were happy to have somebody like her, plus her twin sister, because they spoke Viennese German. So to pick up the kids from the train station and then to place the children with the English families, the fact that they spoke the language the children spoke was comforting. Mm-hmm. And what the Quakers then said was, we cannot give you a working visa, we don't have that thing, but we can give you 3 meals. And I'm not sure if they were able to help her with health or something like that. Mm-hmm. Later on, she was able to get a working visa, and she was associated with the Young Austrians. And they were, of course, as an organization, they were well connected and helped everybody who came there and to place them somehow into a safe situation. Because what many people underestimate with the exiles in London, for quite some time, they didn't know what's going to happen. Yes, they were in a safe country. There was no war immediately threatening them. There was no Gestapo. There were no Nazis. They were not attacked by any other fascist in England. But they had a 3-month visa, something like that. So there was this anxiety, very strong anxiety. What happens if they ask me to leave, you know? What became also very dramatic for both the men and the women, but sometimes for the women even more, because they were in a passive position, when the English took all the men, German-speaking men, and put them into internment camps, labor camps, cutting wood, all this kind of thing. The women didn't know what's going to happen with their partners. Mm-hmm. So it's not to be underestimated, the living in the exile, because people always think it was paradise. And the only thing they were safe of, no knock in the morning on the door by Gestapo. They were safe of that. But otherwise, uncertainty was heavy. And what also was very strong, you know, the British completely treated the exiles or the immigrants as their property. No? They are alien, what you call them, alien subjects or something like that? Anyway, they were not British subjects, they were aliens. Because they took the man and shipped them to Canada to work. They took the man and shipped them to Australia to work. And again, for the women, they don't know what the hell's going to happen to their, you know, either husbands or lovers or sons or, I don't know, fathers, whatever. So that was quite a heavy thing. The reason why I mentioned this is because my mother fell quite ill in the very beginning. And I think it has to do mainly with that uncertainty, mm-hmm. with that anxiety, because she didn't know what's happening to her family that was still in Vienna or somewhere else, like in Yugoslavia or in Prague or whatever, you know. And so it was not, psychologically it was pretty tough mm-hmm. to be there in exile. So then anyway, she was there from 1938, after Hitler's occupation of Austria. The exact month I can't tell you. There is a communication between my mother and my father. In 1938, there's a letter exchange. My father sent a letter to her, asking her, he says, they're taking care of war orphans. If she can maybe organize things that kids need, you know, like drawing with, you know, pencils and what kids need, you know. So he was helping with the kids this is in Spain, right? And I can't tell you, is it in Catalonia or is it somewhere, but I think pretty much, it's probably in Catalonia. And I have that letter that he sent to her, but I see no return letter that she was able to organize anything like that. But key thing is, there was communication. She knew he's alive, that kind of thing, because he was in a war situation. And she's in London.
Some words, your father was in Spain, and this was the time of the Spanish Revolution, the Spanish Civil War.
He was there with the international brigades. So he left Vienna in 1937 by way of Paris. The way that worked was because he was already once he was in Wöllersdorf in the camp from the Austrian police or whatever. And because they caught him with some flyers, no? he was in the Austro-fascist or anti-fascist underground active, not with a gun or nothing. He had his job, but they caught him with flyers,
Propaganda.
So he ended up a lot of people that ended up in Willersdorf, where, if you want to say, none of them was because of violence. Basically, just all were caught
of political work,
because of politically being in the resistance. And so comes 1937, he volunteered to go to Paris. The way this worked, and I met the person who was running this travel agency, the people from Austria went to Paris. The official reason was to go to the expo in Paris in order to get a visa, because being registered by the police, it was not so easy to leave Austria. So they were able to go to the expo, so to speak, in Paris. And then in Paris there was, from the, I guess you could say, Comintern or whatever, were different stations. First of all, physical ability, no? And the other one also reliability, because they always were worried that some spies could enter into Spain through the international brigades. And so he was there from 37, I don't have right now the exact month. And then together with all the other international brigade people, you remember there was this treaty that all the foreign militias or the armies would leave Spain. No? Well, the international brigades did do so. They walked across at, what is it called, La Conquera, the city where they passed into France. And first they were in the internment camp in Saint-Cyprien along the Mediterranean coast. And then they ended up in Gurs, in the camp near the Pyrenees. No? And so there was communication between her and him. No? I don't know how regularly, but they knew. I mean, she knew he's alive, or they would have said, sorry, he died, or something like that. He then went from Gurs, organized by if it was not young, probably Young Austria, or anyway, Communist Party, or whatever. He was in one small group that went from the camp straight into England, but was organized. It was not that they had to go underground or anything, it was organized. They left the camp and went to Austria. There's a paper or a document signed by I don't know how many people who, knowing that he's going to England and then probably gets married, and they sign him on good wishes, good luck wishes, with a big paper like that. And so there were people with him in the group that I personally never met them, but I knew their names. So these were Austrian. This was an Austrian group. Mm-hmm. So that means what this picture has. So then they got married in July 1939. That's why I said I never saw them that way when I grew up with them. There's obviously, some, I don't know, you could call it this mixture of relief, being together, and because they were lovers before already in Vienna, right? And being safe, physically being safe initially, yeah? And then this is a post situation where they're walking. No? Like when I had this picture, I was wondering, my mother had written on the back that this is the date of their marriage, and I have the marriage certificate. So I went in 2009, so that's 70 years after the marriage. I went to London just for one day, and I looked in the computer about this town office or town hall or something like that. It's in the, this has also changed after the war, the district changed, there's Camden and then there's this, it changed. Anyway, I went there. Yes, there was an office, but I look at the picture, it's not that street. And then I asked the people there, look, I have this kind of picture and I'm trying to find where this is. It's not in this street. Do you have some photo library of the area that maybe I can find? So the guy sent me to the next office within the neighborhood. I went there and they said, well, we don't have a library of this, but why don't you go, again, a couple of streets further, they have a library of photographs of the neighborhood. So I went there, there's two women and they listened to my story. I said, this is from my parents in 1939 and I'm looking where this picture was taken and they got married here. So they listened to my story. So they said, that's very interesting, but we are closed today. So they were taking care of the office stuff, but they were not going to go and dig in the library to see this. But they were very, very charming, very lovely, very, really nice people. So I said, well, I come back another time. But I knew that day I'm going to go. I was literally just flying for that one day. I was going to Bratislava in the morning, hopped onto Ryanair, went to London, walked around with this picture, and called some friends of mine that I know still from Tokyo, had dinner with them, and I did not want to go for a few hours to the hotel because I had an early morning. After dinner, I went straight back to the airport, just stretched out there under some chairs, and in the morning I came back to Vienna, again Bratislava. So I had a very interesting experience through this picture, because one very interesting thing is, I mentioned in the text also, as I come out of the subway station, and there's a woman sitting, so like with the homeless people newspaper, and I sat there, I'm looking for street such, and I said, it's right over there. So I'm going over there, and I hear this music, percussion music. I said, maybe there's a carnival or something like that. I go into the street, it's not full with people, but a lot of people, and they were in front of this city town hall office, and there was only police to protect the people not spilling over into the street because traffic was going on. Small street, but still traffic was going on. And they were all these women rather sexy dressed and something like that. The music was, multiculti. I was wondering, what is this, So I asked one of the policewomen, I said, excuse me, but what is this all about? What it is? And she said, they are strippers. They are strippers. She was shy kind of thing, they are strippers. What it was, they were, what you call it, burlesque performers, which you found out later. They were burlesque performers, they're not strippers, they're not prostitutes, as I said, but the police looks at them that way. So they tried, the reason what they were demonstrating, they tried to be recognized as regular performers, so they can get health insurance and this kind of stuff. How the whole thing developed, I don't know, but it was, so for me it was funny, just the reaction of the policewoman, and for me it was wondering, like my parents were never in that kind of environment, but they were very tolerant, they would have understood their position of demonstrating to get their health insurance and stuff like that. So, and because there was constantly police harassing them, treating them as illegal prostitutes. Okay, I found this, so that was it. But I still had in my mind, I will come back to London or go back to London and photograph the parents according to the addresses I had where they lived and all this kind of stuff. Also where young Austria was. And it so happens that at the time, a friend of mine made that book, Young Austrians, and she also had the pictures of my parents, not only this one, other pictures also. And somehow, bang, she has so many pictures around of that street where the young Austrians were. And she says, Hans, I think I found the street. So either she sent me the picture or I went to her office or home or whatever. So when you see the street where the young Austrian center was, you can clearly see that picture is from that street, was taken in that street. So from that on, I photographed that picture in that street several times. And I went around London, some of them, not all addresses, but some of the major addresses, like where in Queensway, not far from the Austrian Center where they lived the last couple of years, when they were in London. And I went to the place where they lived when they got married, which is Kentish Town, which today is, there's Camden, Kentish Town. This is a sort of middle class kind of environment. Mm-hmm. And also, while I photograph this picture, somebody looks at me and they say what I'm doing. Oh, very interesting. So I got around doing this. Then, of course, I went to Hyde Park and I went a few other things. And I probably go back. There's one more park that could be interesting. So I will continue photographing, but not as concentrated as I was already doing. So then I went to Paris anyway. I knew that because the way the traffic situation is in Paris and the trains, coming from London, this is 1946, they would arrive at the train station Gare North. And they would then take Gare de l'Est to go to Vienna. They're very close to each other, these two stations. But they didn't arrive and continue right away. They stayed with friends. The friends also were Austrian people who were in the French resistance, who helped them. And I have no idea how long they stayed in Paris. So what I did then in Paris, of course I photographed this picture at these two train stations from different angles, inside, outside, all kinds of things. But then what I did, I, so to speak, took them on a touristic walk. No idea if they never talked about this, there are no photographs. I took them to the Eiffel Tower, and not from the bottom, but the one, from the on top, I forget,
Trocadero?
Yeah, that one, where you look from like a stage position, a balcony, you look at the whole thing, the whole city. I photographed them from there, together mixing it with all the tourists who looked there. And then I went to, because I personally like that park, the Jardin de Luxembourg. So I took them there because I like that park. They could have gone there, so to speak. I mean, what do you do? They didn't have much money. You're in Paris, what do you do? Maybe they were just hanging out with their friends, being happy to be on their way home to Vienna. And Barcelona is another story that, in a sense, you can say Barcelona, in relationship to the parents, is even more fictive than what I just told you now about Paris, because, first of all, my mother was not in Barcelona in the 30s. In 1975, after Franco's death, my father with my mother and a friend of his, who was also in the International Brigades, with his wife, these 4 people went to Spain, which I assumed that they went to Barcelona, because then they went to La Conquera. That's the closest way you would go. You wouldn't go to Madrid to go to La Conquera. So just these 2 men, kind of a deja vu or kind of thing to experience where they had walked or crossed the border in 1938, and the women to see that where they were. And so what I did when I went to Barcelona, I do not know if my father, there are 2 ways that people came, International Brigade people came to Barcelona. One is regularly by train. So they arrived by Estación Franca, no? And it's a very famous train station in Barcelona, old station. Now everything is modern, underground. They still exist, that station, but not anymore as active as it was before. And some people went by through the mountains. Like some of the refugees did. They were not refugees, but same route they took. And anyway, since there's no documentation, I just took pictures of that station with them, or them with the station, just to have that historic point. There is actually, which I did not photograph, on that boulevard, Colón, no? There was a hotel, Colón or something, and I think this was Communist Party or something. It was one of the important headquarters. I think it was Communist Party, but I'm not sure.
Yes.
I think it was Communist Party. I did not even look for that because that was already too far-fetched from the whole thing. Because my father came to Barcelona, go then south, then he was trained, and that's it. No? And so he was in one battle. That was the Battle of Teruel. And like most people, international brigades, people who went there, they had zero military experience. Many of them being too young to have been in a battle, like First World War, something like that. So they had, I don't know, 2 weeks or something to learn how to shoot, how to throw a grenade or something, learn how to crawl underground. So he kind of felt he's not made for that, physically. And he asked the people in charge, maybe Comintern people, whatever, he says, I want to be transferred to the back and want to work in the hospital or something like that. They gave him the okay. So I saw a very poor copy of that Comintern paper that somebody else photographed in Moscow at the archive. It said something like that he was kind of scared, but he's politically reliable. So I was thinking, imagine that situation if my father would have dared, in case he had a critical opinion, and if he would have said, I think the way we do is the strategy, or I don't know, or we're not equipped enough, or blah, 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 whatever, he could be dead too. You know? They would have, if he would have been lucky, if they would have thrown him out, you know. If he's unlucky, they could have killed him too.
You see, Teruel, in the summer of 1937, is important for the history of photography because it was there that Gerda Darrow fell. She was
the tank who was back
by
crushing her. Yeah.
Own tank who crushed her. So it's Teruel. It's something very.
I mean, basically all the battles, where the international brigades were, but the big battles, all these battles were like Ebro was one of the very important battles and very violent, etc., etc. But Teruel also was a very important battle. No? And so then I took a walk in Barcelona with them. No? So I went to the Ramblas, then I went to the Catalunya, at the building which was Telefonica. So that kind of rounds it off. And then I came to Vienna with that picture where they lived first in the Karl-Mädel-Straße, leading to the Augarten where I grew up. And then I took them to the two positions where they grew up, where I had these sort of memorial plates made for my mother in the Ruibgasse, the grandparents, and for my dad in the Taborstrasse, where he grew up. So there's the grandfather, the plate. That kind of closes it. And I know at the same time, it's endless. I already did when I was in Paris in May. I took some photographs where I was photographing. I will take it now. It stays with me, the picture. I have it all the time with me. And you want to see that?
Show it. We will make the insert during the video.
But I can show you. It's always with me. This is my That's why I just write notes or I write, and so that's then the picture. It's always there with me.
But I think this is it's a very good and also a very important story. The story of this photograph, and you're dealing with this photograph because it shows the importance of photography, the importance of a photograph that is not artistic in the commercial sense, but it shows that photographs have their own story. Each photography has its own story, and it's also an important emotional value.
Yeah, I tell one thing there. You know how much in photography always the value of photographs, especially of people, the value rises if it's an actor or if it's a sportsman, the celebrities. My position is every photography is a celebrity. And you know that, especially when you come to family pictures, a simple passport picture.
Yes.
And especially the situation with the war, where you never met these people. Or if you were older, you knew them a little bit, and all you got left is this picture. Sometimes it's a good photograph, sometimes it's nothing, it's a passport picture, just 5 people standing around or something like that. So in this picture of my parents, on one hand it's a good photograph, walking down that street. On the other hand is, for me, they never had that expression in their face when I grew up with them. Because there's so much disappointment after them coming back here, etc., etc. And I just pass on one comment to you of a friend of mine, because at the end I write that sentence, the parents were, can I continue?
Yeah.
Yeah. The parents were stolen from me. When a friend of mine, a photographer who knew the first steps of this, he says, now that you tell him it is, and now that you wrote this, I know that what I felt was exactly that. He's about my age. He has a different history, but also there's war in his family that shook up the family, right? So he had that feeling when he sees that there is something missing. And so what's missing is that happy moment, if you want to say, that happy moment. Even in Vienna during peacetime, they never had that again, because so much disappointment when they come back. I mean, they came back and did not come back really to build up a new country. They were coming back as if they were the enemies, the way they were treated by the general population, but also the people they grew up with, the solidarity they experienced while they were in London was very minor when they lived here. Suddenly there was this hierarchy. First there's the political hierarchy, then there's the economic hierarchy, then there's the academic hierarchy. Not the nicest way to sort of spend your life,
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I never had that expression. I keep on looking at this picture. That expression was never done. The way they walk, you can see simple clothes, but still style. And yeah.
Thank you, Hans. It was a fascinating story. I think it was a very moving story, and I think people will love it in the same way as you love this photo. And maybe we will get some interesting comments to this video. Thank you for telling us this story.
Okay.
To the next video.
Thank you.